and this is why he's my favorite Superman villain. What's up guys, welcome back to Superhero Legacy. My name is Liam, and in today's video, I'm going to be covering my top 10 favorite Superman villains. I've always loved and admired the character of Superman, and I think he has an incredible rogues gallery which gets slept on. Superman honestly has some pretty top tier villains, so let's count down my top 10 favorite ones. Before I get into it, please remember that this is only my list. I know it's all subjective. I'd love to see your list in the comments below. Secondly, I am going to quickly include an honorable mentions list because Superman just has so many great villains. The first one is going to be Darkseid. I think Darkseid is one of the best villains out there, but I've always seen him more as a universal threat to DC as a whole rather than a threat only to Superman. Next up is Lobo. I really like this character a lot, but some of the things I like best about Lobo don't even have anything to do with his relationship with Superman, so that's why he didn't make it into my top 10. Mr. Mxyzptlk is also getting an honorable mention. I know many people really like him, and I do too. I think it's cool to see a villain whose powers are beyond even our understanding, but I'll admit that I haven't read all that much on him. Next is Manchester Black. With many of Superman's villains posing a physical threat, it's cool to see someone who poses more of a mental threat. Being a telepath, Manchester Black offers a unique conflict that Clark normally doesn't encounter. However, I don't think he's consistent enough as a Superman villain to make it on my list. I'd also like to give an honorable mention to Toyman. Toyman to me has always been a perfect mix of creepy, fun, and creativity, all while also being a fairly interesting and distinct Superman villain, but again, I don't know too much about him. My last honorable mentions I'll give to Livewire and the Eradicator. I like them a lot, but I do think they lack depth and need to be further expanded on. Now moving into my top 10 list, number 10 is going to be Parasite. I love Parasite because he's a villain that always makes Superman use his brain instead of his bronze. Parasite possesses the unique ability to absorb the powers of his enemies, which makes him a formidable opponent to Superman. Superman usually ends up defeating him by thinking of clever ways to outsmart him, and it shows that Supes is more than what meets the eye. I think Parasite needs more representation because he has lots of potential, but moving right along, number 9 on my list is going to be Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime is in my opinion the best take on an evil version of Superman. I think he's got a great origin story, and I love how satirical of a character he is, representing the worst of comic book readers. He's from Earth Prime, which is basically our Earth where superheroes don't exist. He eventually got powers and used them for good, but had to witness his world and everyone he loved get erased from existence right before his eyes. He then traveled to the main DC continuity and saw how corrupted superheroes really are. He gets manipulated by Luthor and gets warped into a vengeful murderer who learns to cut loose, and none of it is really his fault. I love Superboy Prime because we really begin to see the difference that growing up with Pa and Ma Kent made for Kal-El, and we also see what Superman would be like if he lost all sense of hope, which is a significant pillar for the character. Number 8 on my list is going to be Mongul. Mongul is a classic Superman villain, and I love how terrifying his design looks. He's basically an evil warlord who practices violence and conquest. I love him because he's essentially an unapologetic piece of shit. He's brutal, he's destructive, he's callous, and he's just downright evil and despicable. There is no goodness in this guy, and sometimes I like that. No remorse, no empathy, just pure villainy. What makes him scarier is that he's incredibly powerful and can easily pummel Superman. Moving right along, number 7 is General Zod. I really like Zod because unlike Mongul, he's motivated by tragedy and it's easy to empathize with him. He's truly a man of the people, and his commitment to Kryptonian duty makes him even more compelling. His passion for Krypton really makes you feel for him, understand his motives, and makes you cognizant of why his goals would ultimately conflict with Superman. General Zod acts out of emotion because deep down he's hurt, but he's not completely a heartless man. He just wants to lead his people, and he does what he believes is fit for the survival of his race. He's got clear motivations and tremendous resolve, and I think that's why I'm so compelled to him. Number 6 on my list is Doomsday. Now I know that Doomsday himself is less of a character of his own and more of a plot device used for the death of Superman, but what he stands for is important here. Superman represents hope, and Doomsday is the means by which that hope vanishes. Superman gives people a sense of safety, but what happens when he finally meets a worthy contender? What happens when the most powerful hero on the face of the earth dies? Does everything he stood for also die? Will his legacy live on? What will happen in his absence? These are the questions that are asked because of Doomsday. I remember when reading the Death of Superman comic, I actually felt scared. I felt nervous for Superman. As a reader, Doomsday made me feel unsafe, and when he killed Superman, it left a hole inside of me synonymous with what the people of Metropolis Metropolis and the people of Earth were feeling. I think these abstract concepts of Doomsday is what makes me like him so much. Also, he's just an animalistic rage monster who always gives us a good fight. Moving down the list, number 5 is Metallo. I've always thought the concept of Metallo was super cool and interesting. John Corbin was formerly a human criminal, but is now merely a brain within a robotic body and is quite literally powered by a kryptonite heart. He's literally a perfect enemy to Superman because he operates off of Superman's greatest weakness, which is what makes him incredibly dangerous. Perhaps the greatest reason I like Metallo is because many people dislike Superman due to the fact that he's too powerful and doesn't have any weaknesses. Well, Metallo defies that and quite literally represents a walking counter-strike to Supes. What happens when Superman faces off against someone who leaves him powerless? That's the true beauty of this character to me. Number 4 is going to be Bizarro. I like the idea of a twisted, imperfect duplicate of Superman. Bizarro is an inverted reflection of the Man of Steel and is typically portrayed as a well-meaning but fundamentally flawed character. Usually when he's doing evil things, he's being manipulated by other people because Bizarro possesses no real sense of morality himself. His actions are usually motivated by a desire to do good, but his distorted thinking and imperfect understanding of right and wrong often lead to chaotic and destructive outcomes. I've always seen him more as an incompetent superhero rather than a competent supervillain. Overall, I really like Bizarro because he's a complex and unique character who serves as a dark reflection of Superman, embodying themes of imperfection, misunderstanding, and the consequences of good intentions gone awry. Moving into our top 3, number 3 is going to be Brainiac. Brainiac is one of Superman's oldest and most powerful foes. He's a techno-organic being with a 12th level intellect and hyper-advanced technology and travels the multiverse seeking civilizations to shrink and abduct, which he then adds to his collection of captured worlds. He has been responsible for the extinction of countless cultures and the deaths of untold billions. I've always been compelled to Brainiac because his mere existence lies within the capabilities of technology and what machinery and AI can become. With the rise of AI and technology in our world, I think Brainiac is a character that gets even more interesting and most of all, scarier. Technology can be dangerous and it can be used in bad ways. Technology is arguably the antithesis of what it means to be human, and that's why he's one of the best Superman villains. Superman represents humanity, and what better way to depict that by having him come into conflict with a half-computerized being who literally steals the lives of others. I think Brainiac represents the horrors of technology and what it can do. He's also extremely greedy and has no empathy for individuals, themes that are the exact opposite of what Superman stands for. My runner-up is Cyborg Superman. I did a whole video on this character, so make sure to go check that out, but to keep it concise, I love Cyborg Superman because he's the man that Superman couldn't save, and that failure continuously haunts him. Superman is supposed to represent safety, he's supposed to represent hope, but what happens when that hope isn't reinforced? What happens when that hope is betrayed? Cyborg Superman blames Superman for what happened to him and is a great perspective into misplaced faith. He's also a very accurate representation of the psychological complexity of a supervillain and the natural progression of a nihilistic psyche which is by no fault of his own. He was victim to so many horrifically sad events which warped him into a very tragic character. He desires his own death, but his cybernetic abilities and his pure energy form essentially grant him immortality, making him one of the saddest beings in the DC universe. His motivations have moved past revenge on Superman, and he now wants to annihilate the entire universe with him included in it. But my number 1 favorite supervillain, of course, has to be Lex Luthor. Lex is basically the perfect antithesis, the quintessential opposite of Superman. Lex is greedy while Superman is humble. Lex is heartless while Superman is empathetic. Lex is ashamed of human incompetencies while Superman believes in the best of humanity. Lex wants fame and power all to himself while Superman wants the safety and protection of everyone except his own. Lex offers great insight into what Superman could be like if his morality was misguided, and it's the reason we've seen so many interpretations of Lex with Superman's abilities. It's interesting to see what a man like Lex would do with that power. The best part about their dichotomy though is that Superman still believes in Lex. He still believes that he has the potential to be a good man, but Lex can't set his ego aside and he can't get out of his own way long enough to do anything useful with his skills and resources. It perfectly shows how committed Superman is to making sure he brings out the best in everyone. In a lot of ways, I can actually understand Lex and where he's coming from. He believes that people shouldn't instantaneously put their faith in a higher being, especially when that person is an alien, an outsider, not even human. Superman reinforces Lex Lex's worldview and philosophy that people can ultimately be useless and they should follow the strongest person, except that strongest person should be Lex instead of Superman. Their duality is so rich and compelling to me, and I think he's undeniably the best Superman villain because he opposes everything that Superman stands for in the most fundamental and thematic ways. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you liked my top 10 list, and make sure to comment what your list is down in the comments below. But for now, that's going to do it, so peace. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Please like and subscribe for more superhero content and share your thoughts on my top 10 favorite Superman villains down in the comments below. You can check out some of my other videos right over here, but for now, thank you so much for watching and stay super.